morning, everyone. Today we have with us Mr. Hani Hayajneh. He is a professor at the Faculty of Archaeology and Anthropology at Yarmouk University in Irbid, Jordan. He is an expert in the field of cultural heritage studies, especially the intangible cultural heritage. He is one of the accredited UNESCO International Team of Facilitators for the 2003 Convention for Safeguarding Intangible Cultural Heritage. Thank you so much for being here with us, and I give you the floor.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for for giving me the chance to present my talk today. Sincere thanks go to Professor Petrelio for inviting me to participate in such meetings, and I hope that my presentation will give some information about the status of intangible cultural heritage in a Middle Eastern country like Jordan. In fact, I'm going to be a little bit precise regarding the modalities and the approach of safeguarding intangible cultural heritage in Jordan, and I'm going to focus more on the inventorying process. Well, first of all, I would like to give an idea about Jordan. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan was established as a kingdom in 1946 after it broke the colonial ties with the British Mandate of Transjordan. The Jordanian economy is based on tourism, mining, substantial expatriate and international funding. Tourism is one of the main income generation sector in Jordan and contributes circa 13% of GDP. Jordan has witnessed a rapid population growth from about 400,000 in 1920 to an estimated 11 million in 2022. Most of these people live in Jordan or live in northern Jordan cities such as Amman, Irbid, Zarqa, and Mafra. In contrast to a farmer, a Bedouin is generally identified as a pastoral nomad in a desert environment. However, it is very difficult to draw a sharp line between both. The non-Bedouin population and mobile pastoral Bedouin. Jordan national identity emerged from three main factors: the Great Arab Revolt of 1916-1918, the tracing of a monarchy lineage back to the Prophet Muhammad, and the rule of the tribes. Here, individual tribal identities were integrated in a collective tribal one. Although numerically few Jordanians live the traditional life of nomadic Bedouin, the cultural traditions based on this lifestyle were hardly diminished. Conceptions of modern Jordanian cultural and national identity were deeply intertwined with the country's Bedouin heritage. In fact, tribalism in Jordan today is not the antiquated anthropological idea that refers to tribes as rigid social components, but rather an intangible emotion that entails a varying degree of loyalty to a tribe, as well as the social sense of belonging to a certain people, which may, but does not necessarily play a part of person's everyday life. Other ethnic groups like Circassians, Chechens, Armenians, and Kurds form, with the mentioned groups, a major component of the Jordanian community. Since we are presenting this contribution in the context of the UNESCO Chair for IC Intangible Cultural Heritage and Comparative Law, I will give some information about the efforts of the UNESCO in safeguarding and preserving of Jordan's cultural heritage. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, is a UN agency founded in 1946. As stated in the UNESCO's constitution, UNESCO's global mandate is to contribute to building culture of peace, the eradication of poverty, sustainability, development, and international dialogue. With more than 15,000 archaeological sites in Jordan, 6 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, 14 sites included in the UNESCO tentative list, and vernacular and built heritage dating after 1750, widespread across the country. Jordan cultural heritage represents a strong asset for the country, a focus of international scientific research, and a driver of country's tourism industry. According to the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities data, tourism contributes up to 13 of the total GDP, with the highest figures being recorded in 2019. Turning to living heritage, living traditions defined by UNESCO as intangible cultural heritage do represent a precious aspect of the country's heritage. The diversity of cultural layers and historical backgrounds represent a strong asset for the country and is inherently part of its nature, being Jordan located at the crossroad of civilizations and trading routes, and thus exposed to a diversity of cultures and traditions since prehistoric times. The cultural domain covered by UNESCO is particularly broad and is governed by UNESCO cultural conventions, normative tools ratified by the government for the development of policies for the protection, safeguarding, and preservation of tangible and intangible cultural heritage, as well as the promotion of the diversity of cultural expressions. The World Heritage Convention is the most well-known among them, being established in 1972 and linked to the preservation of cultural and natural sites across the world. The other conventions include the 1954 Convention for Protection of Heritage Against Armed Conflict, the 1970 Convention on the Preservation of Illicit Trafficking of Cultural Property, the 2001 Convention for Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage, and the 2003 Convention for the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage, and the 2005 Convention for the protection and promotion of cultural expressions. Now I'm going to talk about Jordan's policy regarding intangible cultural heritage. In fact, Jordan seeks to adopt a general policy that aims at highlighting the role of intangible cultural heritage within the community in harmony with the sustainable development through a wise strategic planning. This is evident from the national agenda, which emphasizes that cultural development is vitally related to a political, economic, and social development. It aims as well to activate the institutional work by establishing a High Council for Culture and Arts to be headed by the Minister of Culture to draw policies and set strategies related to the sector, monitor a supportive account fund that is going to be established in partnership with the public and private sectors. This step will allow for the financial support and funding individuals and institutions and cultural artistic centers and relevant projects. As a result, the cabinet approved in 2010 the establishment of a department for intangible cultural heritage with the the ministry's administrative structure was established. It will help in setting national strategy for intangible cultural heritage. The working mechanism of this department relies on the various sectors worked on ICH issues. Its mission goes beyond management to reach the communities as bearers of intangible cultural heritage to ensure their proper participation in the safeguarding process. Now I'm going to give a kind of synopsis of Jordan's efforts for safeguarding intangible cultural heritage in the context of the 2003 Convention for Safeguarding Intangible Cultural Heritage. Jordan tried to mobilize institutional work through the establishment of a Jordanian Higher National Committee for the Intangible Cultural Heritage, headed by the Minister of Culture, to draw policies and set strategies related to the sector, which aims at promoting awareness of the significance of safeguarding intangible cultural heritage with the participation of communities, groups, and individuals. It will help in the realization of a classification system for intangible cultural heritage on the basis of a shared methodology among the stakeholders by taking into account both the UNESCO well-defined cultural policy and its orientation in the field. Certain governmental and non-governmental institutions have accomplished some work on intangible cultural heritage, though much of this work is not organized and known under different generic names and titles. Different intangible cultural heritage lists, studies, and treatises on the subject were traced in the history of research on intangible cultural heritage that will remain as a valuable source of the country's intangible cultural heritage and a basis for any future inventory that complies with the UNESCO 2003 Convention and its operational directives. Jordan has established the UNESCO Chair for Cultural Heritage and Sustainable Development at Al Hussein bin Talal University in Ma'an, in cooperation with the UNESCO office in Amman. This university succeeded under the guidance of the present speaker to establish a UNESCO chair of heritage and sustainable tourism at the premises of Petra College of Tourism and Archaeology in Wadi Musa, which is located near Petra. The long-term objective of the UNESCO chair is study, interpret, and protect Jordan's cultural heritage, as well as to provide a foundation to the study of cultural heritage through research, training, archiving, as well as information and documentation initiatives in the field of heritage and sustainable development. Also, Jordan has established the Princess Basma bin Talal Center for Intangible Cultural Heritage at the same university. In fact, this center, we succeeded to establish this center at the premises of the Petra College, which supports the process of identification and documentation of intangible cultural heritage in the southern parts of Jordan, disseminate technical knowledge and the provision of equipments and necessary infrastructure, carry out conservation and restoration of digital multimedia data on intangible cultural heritage, and create inventories for the preparation of nominations and operations of programs and educational resources to ensure the continued transfer of intangible cultural heritage. Also, Jordan succeeded in inscribing of intangible cultural heritage elements on the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Jordan succeeded in inscribing 4 elements on the representative list as follows: the cultural space of the Bidu in Petra and Wadi Rum. The cultural space of the Bedouins in Petra and Wadi Rum comprises of the living relationship of Bedouins communities maintaining with the space they inhabit and practice, and from which they derive resources as mobile pastoralists and agriculturalists, as people engaged in tourism-related activities. Also, we succeeded in inscribing a performing art element, which is a samir in Jordan. A samir is considered to be one of the inherent art in Jordan, to be practiced in different occasions, especially at weddings. A samir is transmitted from generation to generation. It encourages the public to spontaneously participate, as it encourages all attendees of all ages to take part. And also, we succeeded in inscribing the element date palm, knowledge, skills, traditions, and practices on the representative list. It is, in fact, a joint nomination with other Arab countries, because the date palm, knowledge, skills, traditions, and practices have played a pivotal role in strengthening the connection between people and the land in the Arab region, helping them face the challenges of the harsh desert environment. The next element which we succeeded to inscribe is the Arabic calligraphy, knowledge, skills, and practices, because the practice which can be passed down through formal and informal education uses the 28 letters of Arabic alphabet written in cursive form. This element was in fact inscribed in cooperation with other Arab countries, in fact through the and was supported by the Alexo, which is based in Tunis. Now I come to the main part of my lecture. It's about inventorying. Since the establishment of the kingdom, certain governmental and non-governmental institutions have accomplished some work on intangible cultural heritage, though much of this work is dispersed and characterized by different nomenclatures and titles. Among the previous attempts to deal with the intangible cultural heritage, it is remarkable that no unified and constant standards or criteria were followed. Different lists, studies, and treatises on the subject were traced in the history of research of intangible cultural heritage. They remain, however, as a valuable source of the country's intangible cultural heritage and the basis for many future inventory for any future inventory that complies with the UNESCO Convention. The first, organized inventory in Jordan is the Mediterranean Living Heritage Project. In fact, it was under the Mediterranean Living Heritage Project. It was the first pioneering step towards capacity building in Jordan. The project, the MIDLIHER, as an abbreviation, more Mediterranean Living Heritage, was the stimulus for creating the first intangible cultural heritage inventory in Jordan. As a pilot project, Madaba Governorate was selected to apply the first community-based inventorying in the line of the UNESCO Convention. Together with Egypt, Lebanon, Maison de Culture du Monde, and the UNESCO ICH section in Paris, Jordan participated in the 2010 in the Mediterranean Living Heritage, which is co-funded by UNESCO and the European Union with the Euromed Heritage Forum. This project aimed at supporting the implementation of the 2003 Convention and strengthen the institutional capacities in the respective countries in order to facilitate their effective participation in the international mechanism for the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage, and to elaborate it aimed at supporting the implementation of the 2003 Convention and strengthen the institutional capacities in the respective countries in order to facilitate their effective participation in the international mechanism for safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage, and to elaborate and develop safeguarding measures and projects with the participation of communities and relevant groups. The Mediterranean Living Heritage contributed in improving regional cooperation and exchange of skills, experience by establishing a network of institutions and developing a web portal that will serve as interface of a database developed in this to this end. It constituted an ideal venue for setting up safeguarding projects that will take due account of Jordan's needs, priorities, and constraints. The three following phases were implemented: assessment of the current situation concerning the state of safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage in the Mediterranean partner countries, our case is Jordan; development of national safeguarding projects and setting up of a regional network; implementation of the safeguarding projects identified and developed in the phase 2 of the project. In fact, the project was able to identify inventories of the Jordanian intangible cultural heritage by investigating, interviewing, collection, and compilation of information. 2 local workshops were conducted within this project with the strong participation of the relevant institutions in Jordan and also the communities concerned. In fact, the project reflected the inclusivity of all intangible cultural heritage spread in the area concerned. This allowed for the incorporation of a diverse range of practices and knowledge that exist within the region. Another relevant issue is that oral traditions and expressions recorded and safeguarded through the Jordanian inventory should not be restricted to the speakers of indigenous Arabic dialects of Jordan, but also it should go beyond that to reach the ethnic groups like Circassian, Chechens, Armenians, and the Druze communities, who would be equally considered to be within the scope of intangible cultural heritage of Jordan. In Jordan, processes of identifying areas of occurrence should be accompanied with ascribing the intangible cultural heritage elements of spread prevalent in the country to their geographical places, their holders, and their communities, followed by the process of conservation or safeguarding, protection, and conservation. The next project of intangible cultural heritage inventorying is the community-based inventorying of urban living heritage in relation to income generation in Irbid city. Irbid city is located in the northern parts of Jordan, and it's one of the most dense cities in northern Jordan, especially after the crisis in the neighboring countries, after the crisis began in the neighboring countries, because it receives a lot of guests from the neighboring countries. And that was, this, in fact, has its impacts on the intangible cultural heritage of Irbid city. UNESCO Amman office facilitated this project, which is under the name Community-Based Inventorying of Urban Living Heritage in relation to income generation. The project is part of a wider UNESCO program generously funded by the Chinese company, Yongxin Huayu, that aims to explore how living traditions are evolving in urban contexts in times of rapid social change. This program, entitled Intangible Cultural Heritage and Creativity for Sustainable Cities, has been carried out so far in 60 cities worldwide, including Ayacucho in Peru, Georgetown in Malaysia, Harare in Zimbabwe, Kingston in Jamaica, and Tbilisi in Georgia. In each city, the focus of the project has been on living traditions linked in some way to income generation, whether they are craft, festivals, and events, or traditional occupations, or others. As a pilot project, the training and the practicum itself are exploratory and aimed at encouraging local communities, youth in particular, to take a greater interest in participating in the safeguarding of their own heritage through documentation approaches such as questionnaires, photography, video, and audio recordings. The project, Intangible Cultural Heritage and Creativity for Sustainable Cities, aim to promote the role of culture in sustainable urban development, and also more specifically address the role that living heritage and creativity can play in building sustainable cities. A community-based inventorying workshop was organized to specifically develop the capacity of national facilitators on inventorying of intangible cultural heritage that exists in the urban context. This is one of the key safeguarding measures encouraged under the UNESCO 2003 Convention for the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage, which Jordan ratified in 2006, as it brings community members together to reflect on activity, taking part in discussion, and documenting their own culture. Now I'm going to talk about a little bit about the methods of inventorying which we followed here in Jordan. There are many ways to conduct an inventorying process. Here it is organized into 5 steps: community involvement, planning and evaluating, data research, documentation, and publicizing the results. Each step presents a basic procedure and supports material to help communities, groups organize their own intangible cultural heritage inventory. One of the aspects that the convention highlights is that in comparison with other regulatory texts in the field of heritage, This one calls for and encourages participation of the whole society in safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage. It also asks each state party to endeavor to ensure the widest possible participation of communities, groups, and individuals to keep this heritage alive. Therefore, it was essential to prescribe from the outset the involvement of each of the following agents in the project. In the inventorying, public administration competent in the implementation of the convention to establish a general policy of safeguarding and validating it. It was in fact the Ministry of Culture which was involved in this step. Local institutions, both political and social or otherwise, to act as representatives as well as community members involved in the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage. Moreover, the experts, as their knowledge on the convention or on the elements of the intangible cultural heritage, the history of local cultures, on sustainable development, etc., is of great use to bring various elements into the context. The communities, groups, and individuals that recreate and transmit intangible cultural heritage. This is our experience regarding the inventorying of intangible cultural heritage. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the other programs that Jordan has facilitated and conducted since the ratification of the convention. In fact, we organized in cooperation with the UNESCO office in Amman and awareness campaigns about the importance of intangible cultural heritage. In fact, these campaigns contributed in strengthening the national capacities for the implementation of the 2003 Convention at stakeholders level, involved in a wide spectrum of the Jordanian community in safeguarding intangible cultural heritage, created a public discussion among the Jordanians on intangible cultural heritage, and also stimulated a dialogue on social educational aspects of safeguarding, promoting the importance of intangible cultural heritage in sustainable development, and creating methods of applying information and networking for the development of strategies for intangible cultural heritage in Jordan. Moreover, we recently tried to establish an educational module for intangible cultural heritage in Jordan, because Jordan recognized the value of intangible cultural heritage as a vital value for the establishment of the educational model to show young generation how important is our intangible cultural heritage is. This requires a legal basis to create ideal conditions for children and young people to immerse in their intangible cultural heritage and accordingly transmit it, as well as cooperation and coordination between different ministries such as education, culture, social development, etc. Given this background, UNESCO Amman office initiated in cooperation with the present speaker an educational module on the intangible cultural heritage in Jordan with lesson plans on traditional children games, which aims to design in-class teaching aids within the framework of non-formal education that can be delivered after school or during extracurricular activities. It is expected to introduce students to the concept of intangible cultural heritage and present traditional children games in Jordan in a fun, creative, and effective manner. The next part of my talk will deal with the challenges and recommendations, the challenges that we are facing in Jordan regarding the intangible cultural heritage and its safeguarding. And I'm going to give some recommendations and concluding remarks. In fact, Jordan might be in the position to explore and apply specific tailored measures and initiatives with full involvement of communities, groups, and individuals to continue safeguarding its intangible cultural heritage that look at the same time to fulfill the requirements of sustainable development goals, for example, but not limited to, building capacities of communities, groups, and individuals for safeguarding intangible cultural heritage and raise their awareness about its importance, exploring the potential of Jordanian museums in safeguarding intangible cultural heritage, supporting educational institutions to infuse intangible cultural heritage contents into their educational plans and curricula, because formal and non-formal education can be, of course, can play an important role in, say, strengthening and raising awareness on intangible cultural heritage, and also transmission both within and beyond communities who practice intangible cultural heritage. In fact, collaborative processes in the country can engage all parties working in this field of intangible cultural heritage in conceptualizing, producing, and implementing the educational projects to safeguard ICH. Moreover, we can also enhance the role of NGOs working in the field of intangible cultural heritage, and also modifying the existing legislations and constitutional provisions. This can succeed in a way to deal with intangible cultural heritage issues to be harmonious with the rights of communities, groups, and individuals, so that they have the freedom to control the manifestation of their intangible cultural heritage, while governmental bodies are there to ensure that the community has not been deceived into giving authorization or simply not consulted. In addition, we can also enhance media and information channels for more awareness raising on the importance of intangible cultural heritage. The last point is investing intangible cultural heritage in the sustainable tourism sector. Certain products and expressions are considered within the intangible cultural heritage category, such as craftsmanship, which benefits from tourism development, as their output can be divorced from the producers with regard to its dimension as tangible craft heritage. To conclude, I would like to say, involving ministries that are not directly connected to intangible cultural heritage in Jordan matters to raise awareness among its affiliates and decision makers about the importance of intangible cultural heritage in sustainable development. For example, ministries of planning, trade and industry, tourism and antiquities, and finance. The idea behind that is that the essential factor that contribute to the success of any intangible cultural heritage related project should take into consideration income generating, involving of community, especially the ICH bearers themselves. And also we need also wise planning, which can provide communities with a favorable conditions to join the income generating activities of a project. Moreover, conditions should be created so that tradition bearers can get access to and benefit from their own cultures, and also to continue promoting and creating new cultural values. As a conclusion, more efforts to raise awareness are still needed in Jordan. Children and youth must be the main target, as they constitute the majority of the Jordanian society. Multimedia tools would be from the most important means to realize such a target. Thank you very much.